I don't know if we can take that full screen, gang. I'm not trying to direct from the chair, but I think that is a fascinating picture because that is a shot into the caucus meeting that is happening. Wow. And there is the Prime Minister standing at a podium with a mic in his hand and the blinds open. As this room, you will remember this room. This is on the second floor of the Sir John A. Macdonald building. If it's not too traumatic to cast your mind back to the COVID years, this is where Dr. Theresa Tam and Dr. Howard New would hold their regular briefings and their press conferences to update Canadians on the public health measures and the response to the COVID-19 emergency. The Prime Minister is there in the middle of a political emergency, having lost his Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance in a stunning resignation today, quitting on the day that Chrystia Freeland was supposed to deliver a fall economic statement, one that shows they had blown past the fiscal guardrail of a $40 billion deficit for the 2023-2024 fiscal year, driving in a deficit of $61.9 billion, a 50% increase in the size of the deficit due to one-time expenses, not dismissing the size and the magnitude of it, but it's not as if regular structural program spending increased by that amount to drive the country that much deeper into the red. This was the settling of lawsuits and other contingent liabilities, mostly to do with claims made by Indigenous groups. We just saw Sean Fraser, who also announced that he would be leaving politics, not running again, and leaving cabinet when the next shuffle comes. The Prime Minister has seemed to have maybe just finished, put down his microphone. There will be an intense question and answer session, I believe, in this caucus meeting. As someone has taken the microphone and appears to be calling on people in the room. There is going to be also, we hear, a demand that Justin Trudeau step down as leader, one being resurrected by that group of dissidents who presented the letter earlier this fall calling for the Prime Minister to step down. The numbers, we're told, have swelled today, and a more specific demand is going to be made to them there. Rosie, just bring you in. You heard Goldie Hyder saying that there are problems with the financial plan laid out today. The size of the deficit is larger, and yes, it may be one-time spending, but you know they put the country in that situation to begin with, and here they are. And the Bloc Québécois also saying this is coming very last minute, and probably this is why.
Yes, I mean, listen, I think that the document that I have not read in full for obvious reasons does address some of the concerns that economists had been raising over the past number of months around productivity, around growth, around trying to find ways to strengthen the economy in a broader way. It did not add, for instance, new social measures or social programs, which is where the government has spent a lot of its time and capital and money up to now. I don't think we can criticize a court ruling that they had to pay out to correct historical wrongs against Indigenous children. So those things are all explicable. I think the problem comes back to if this is the document that Chrystia Freeland worked on for months, as we're told, and was proud of and happy with, the thing that has caused this resignation today remains the checks, which she clearly didn't like and are not in this document, and we don't think that they are necessarily going forward because there's certainly no support for them. And then the demotion and the way that was handled. That is really where we end up at the end of this day. I will just say, to see the Prime Minister through that open blind, and I don't know if that was done intentionally. I am cynical enough to think it might have been, but we don't see inside that room very often.
I don't think today was planned very well.
No, that's fine.
Just so you know.
That's fine, but you never know. But to see him stand there with the microphone in front of a group of people who are some angry, many very, very disappointed at how this day has unfolded. And for him to stand there and take it, that's a really hard thing for him to do. And if he walks out of there and still feels like he can stay in his job, that's going to be another remarkable twist in what has been an extraordinary day.
Okay, I want to get quick takes from the power panel on what we just saw, and then Peter Julian, the NDP House Leader, is standing by. Lisa Raitt, we saw that glimpse of what was happening through the window, and Chrystia Freeland was in that room. She was in the audience the Prime Minister was addressing on the day she quit cabinet. What do you make of what we just saw there?
I was hoping the cameraman would stay there a little bit longer. See what else is going to happen.
Yeah.
I was yelling, no, don't go away. I want to see this.
They may have been moved in defense of them. These things happen. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm not. There's no ill intention meant there. It was just my own inner wanting to see what was going on in there, curiosity. Listen, I think he had the right look on his face, certainly. But now comes the questions, and if people have made up their minds that they don't want to go into an election with him, that really is what it comes down to. I agree with Rosemary. I looked at the fall economic statement and I thought, what's in here that is worthy of what we just witnessed this morning? But it must be. And it must be about all of the gaslighting that's been happening, the leaks that's been happening, wondering whether or not Mark Carney is going to have the job or not have the job. I mean, it does boil to a point where somebody just can't handle it anymore. And obviously that point was reached today. But by the Prime Minister choosing Dominic LeBlanc, I keep going back to this, that to me says he's not going anywhere at all because he wants to try to manage his way through this.
Vandana, what do you make of what we saw and what we've heard so far?
I think with Minister Freeland in regards to the fall economic statement, I think the issue is more like, having worked with her, I was with her on the 2013 by-election. She's a very dedicated mother. At some point as working moms, you decide, is this worth my time? And I think the pressure of all of it, plus the gaslighting, plus the just feeling that being told that you're getting moved on when you feel like I put together a really good document, I stood by you. I understand how she feels. I understand where she's like, you know what, I don't know if this works for me. So I understand and respect that. For Ms. LeBlanc, you need to show strength. You need to show a caucus member. Like, someone asked me today, like, will they focus on cabinet and leave the finance minister? I'm like, no, the most important cabinet position, now every cabinet position is important, but some more than others, is the finance minister. You need someone who's going to work with Donald Trump. You need someone that they're already familiar with, someone who can know how to handle a ministry and department. So I feel that that's why they chose Minister LeBlanc and someone that they can work with. Will he obviously try? No Prime Minister ever wants to leave. And I think the other question too is an MP, I think what's going to happen this time versus last time, what I'm curious about is a lot of members of Parliament, maybe they feel that way. Are they going to tell him that? Are they going to say, I want you to leave now? And I always find when it comes to that point, they may not want to do that.
Yeah, that was Brenda Shanahan, the caucus chair, who took the microphone away from the Prime Minister. I've asked to get the shot back up, by the way. That's what I was seriously taping away, because this is must-see TV as far as I'm concerned. A look inside the caucus at a time of crisis like this. Jordan and Rob, just very quickly, because I do want to get to Peter Julian, who is standing by. Jordan, just your quick thoughts.
Yeah, this is remarkable. We're seeing somebody literally fighting for their political life live here. And I think, to the point of what Vandana was saying, there has been sort of a lack of courage on the part of Liberal caucus members in expressing their concerns about the Prime Minister, but if ever you were going to do it, today is the day. So I think that the real danger for the Prime Minister here is that you get that critical mass that pushes it over the top in caucus of people who want him to go. And there's certainly, there's not going to be a better opportunity. For those who believe that there needs to be change ahead of the next election, this is their moment.
I just point out, there's Marco Mendicino. I just saw the Prime Minister's photographer walk by. So we are seeing, you can actually decipher some people through this open blind.
Mona Fortier as well.
Yeah, Mona Fortier, you're right.
The photographer's there. This is going to be an interesting memento. Rob, quick, and then we're going to go to Peter Julian.
Sure.
And we'll come back.
Listen, Chrystia Freeland was recruited by the Prime Minister. She was his deputy Prime Minister. She was his finance minister. Many of the people around Justin Trudeau thought that she incarnated the very essence of neoliberalism under Justin Trudeau. To see her, in effect, shoved to what would have been dizzying heights of humiliation when he asked her to stand up and deliver something she didn't believe in, everybody in that room has to wonder, would he do that to me? If he did that to her, would he do that to me? And we didn't see him with a whip and an overturned chair while he was speaking. But right now, there are lots of people wondering that as they line up to the microphones.
But can I just say that is not, he was not asking her to deliver something she didn't want to deliver. That is not what was happening. This document is something that her people say she's proud of.
But to deliver it while he said that he no longer had faith in her as finance minister, and after 6 months of steady undermining, would have been a dizzying humiliation.
Well, for her to have been, for the rug to have been pulled out from under her 2 days after she was going to deliver something that she was proud of, that would have been.
Yeah, it looks like a vote of no confidence,
That's
whether
right.
it's intended to be that or not. And you can understand how after months of leaks, that would be the impression and the foundation that she would be operating from. Continue to peek through the wide open blinds of the Liberal caucus meeting where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is more or less fighting for his leadership on a day where his Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister resigned. We're going to discuss some of the implications of what we just heard there. So, Rosie, just very quickly, Peter Julian, after saying it was very clear that if Justin Trudeau is still Prime Minister February or March and there's a non-confidence vote, that's a straight-up non-confidence, as we see Mark Miller, one of the Prime Minister's dearest friends in Cabinet, listening to what's going on. The NDP have given their timeline for when they will vote non-confidence. What do you make of that?
Yeah, well, I hope Mr. Singh agrees. I hope. I mean,
have a new House Leader coverage
I hope
tomorrow.
Peter
Yeah.
Julian wasn't freelancing there, because Mr. Singh was not anywhere near that clear earlier when he spoke, saying only that all options were on the table. Well, according to Peter Julian, the option is you've got a couple of months, and if you're not gone, we pull the plug. I mean, that would be a natural moment anyway. If this government survives, if this Prime Minister survives, there will be a budget that will be tabled. That had been, my thought on when the next possibility for an election might be, regardless. So I'm not sure how far out on a limb he's going there, really. But yeah.
I think our cameras may have been spotted, Rosie. I see activity. There's Dan Vandel, Mona Forte, Marco Mendicino,
Moving
and
away.
Security bringing. Oh, what a bunch of party poopers.
It took a while.
Well, there you go, folks.
Did we get the lip reader in there?
Well, we're just spending our money on a body language expert and all the things we were hoping to get. But alas, they wised up. I just got a text from a Liberal saying, I can't believe they've left the blinds open. I was like, well, I'm so glad they did, because we now have B-roll to do for these things. Lisa, the timeline the NDP just gave, February and March. The Conservatives will cynically attack the NDP for saying that, well, of course, you're going to do it in February or March because Jagmeet Singh will have his pension. That's been their attack on the guy they call the Maserati Marxist. So he's too rich to be sincere, but also needs a pension to make ends meet. What do you make of that timeline, though, February, March, heading to possibly a late spring election?
It's possible. I guess what they're saying is that they're not going to necessarily get sweet-talked by Dominic LeBlanc into the next budget, but Dominic LeBlanc is quite persuasive. So let's see whether or not he's able to work his magic on this party. But, this is the same party that said about 4 weeks ago that if Justin Trudeau dared to order the Canadian Union of Postal Workers back to work, that they would have something to do about it and they would take him down. And that clearly didn't work either. So I don't have a lot of faith in what their ultimatums are, because they are very fluid. They move.
Jordan, what do you make of this one, though? That whole Blinds episode is given this a season finale of Veep vibe.
Yes.
But, we do have some clarity there from Peter Julian on how all options on the table will be deployed.
Yeah, and I think I also heard him say that he thinks it's just very unlikely that scenario is even going to come to pass. They have no thought that Trudeau is going to be able to survive that long. So I think that was also an important factor in their consideration. And what they're saying is that this whole drama here has distracted the government from a focus on helping Canadians through a moment of just huge economic national crisis. And it's hard to find fault with that argument. On the day that the government's supposed to be resetting the agenda with a new economic statement, instead we're debating the very political life of the Prime Minister, all due to their own internal mismanagement of that. And so it's really tough to see this government continuing to limp on past the spring, one way or the other.
Vandana, Rosie has helpfully handed me a note saying that Chrystia Freeland is still in that caucus meeting. So whatever the Prime Minister had to say about the events she put in motion today, that he kind of put in motion with his conversation with her on Friday, she heard it all, and she's there to hear the conversation. What do you think of Mr. Julian's analysis that he is highly skeptical that Justin Trudeau is still the Prime Minister when Parliament returns?
I mean, it's possible. And again, I go back to, as much as some people may feel this way, I still have yet to find the caucus members who actually say it. There's still like a very small majority who actually say it to his face, like, please leave. There's also no leavers to do so either, right? So I think it goes back down to, can they survive tonight and then break for the holidays? So I think it is very much possible. I mean, I would be surprised if he does resign tonight, if something happens like that. Yep. I just don't see in the caucus, and I think a lot of them they don't want to be that person. So I think you might see more people like leaving. More likely that's going to happen rather than take a stand and say that he needs to go. That's a decision that I think for the most part will be left up to him.
I will just say on the levers, I take what you're saying. There's no formal process.
No Reform Act. Right?
But these are the levers. Chrystia Freeland's letter, that's the lever. Whatever they're saying to him to his face, that's the lever. He has time and again been threatened in his leadership over the past 6 months and has managed to just kind of put on some blinders and ride it out until it settled back down.
Yeah.
Is that the play again this time that they, the House rises tomorrow, they go on holidays and then they sort of pretend everything's okay until he comes back? I don't know. But to me, that would be another mistake to ignore what is a serious problem right now.
Well, Vandana, on that point, my sense has been, going back to the Toronto St. Paul's, the demand for a caucus meeting, the post-LaSalle, they're out of the country, let's sign the letter. They move to solve the problem for them. The centre does, from an internal issues management, operations management thing. They don't actually solve the problem at its source, right? Which is assuage the concerns and the anxiety and the anger and the disillusionment that exists in their caucus. And, this is where it's kind of brought things.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, there's been asks for changes to be had. We haven't seen those changes. They're just hoping to just show that they can be credible and serve Canadians and do things like the GST vacation and show that, we can still deliver this. I think they were hoping for a good day with the Fez. I think they were hoping that maybe a great shuffle that will help change things up. Some of the names are being passed around are names that would be very different for this cabinet. So I think they were hoping for that, but we'll have to see. But to Rosemary's point, these are the levers, but at the end of the day, there's no procedural lever to force him out. At the end of the day, he has to decide to leave.
Rob?
Contested without, contested within, contested by the premiers, contested now south of the border by the U.S. president, and a wise owl just texted me to say that if we were to stick to the NDP's timeline of late February, March, before they vote no confidence, that would be 6 weeks after tariffs could be applied. So I don't think people are going to wait that long, and I don't think that the Prime Minister is probably going to wait.
But I also think the NDP don't want to face a pure party of majority government, and I think that's what also takes this time.
No, look, absolutely. But Rob, just to come back to the tariff point, this is I get the demands coming from the other side of have an election, get a government with a mandate, bring some legitimacy to the Prime Minister's office and Parliament. That seems to be in dispute right now. But that, if you look at the time frame that's available to January 20th, you're not going to have an election, change government, bring them in, have a response, and avoid the tariffs by the deadline that Trump has. So, I mean, they've got to use the time they have to do something to satisfy the president-elect. Because if they don't, the economic consequences for the country are just absolutely catastrophic, beyond whatever internal political drama they're dealing with as a party.
Are the interests of the country being served by the Prime Minister remaining in office? I think if he looked hard in the mirror, the answer to that would be no. We have nobody who's really speaking authoritatively for Canada right now in a discussion that does lead to not a staggering, but a withering blow to our economy. I think we do need somebody who speaks for the country, and right now the Prime Minister seems to have abdicated that at a minimum to the premiers who speak for their regions and not for the country. And somehow, I don't know how, he might have to convince us that he has that authority, but as it stands now, contested inside of his caucus, contested in cabinet, contested by the premiers, where does he prove that he has that authority? Okay,
so Lisa, just a thought exercise here. The Prime Minister announces he's leaving. The Prime Minister opens it up to a leadership race. That solves the Trudeau problem that is on display today. It does not solve the Trump problem that persists. So in that period between departure and succession, who steps up to deal with Donald Trump? Because January 20th is coming, whether we like it or not, and that is the deadline. So who steps in out of the options that are available inside the Liberal caucus?
I think they announced it today already. It's Dominic LeBlanc. He's going to be the placeholder, not necessarily as the interim Prime Minister, but certainly as the one that's going to lead that. I do think the more elegant way, though, is for an election. I think that one is a little bit easier because you can possibly see a scenario where Donald Trump looks north and says, well, they seem to be undergoing a change up there. Maybe we'll wait till the new person's in and see if we can deal with them a little bit better. That would be what I'd be pitching if I were sitting in the conservative seats.
Do you think Donald Trump has demonstrated that kind of flexibility and reasonableness on things that he wants and is willing to do a tariff on?
At least it's an unknown, right?
Yeah.
You don't know what he's going to do in that case, but you do know that he's not going to be helpful to Trudeau.
And many of his own people have wanted him gone, and he could claim credit for this, and he would probably like a trophy like Trudeau.